Hello, my name is Aaron Snow, and in this video we're going to talk about listening and listening skills. And I want to start by reading some scriptures pertaining to something that Jesus said about listening and about paying attention. In the book of Matthew, in the 13th chapter, starting with the 10th verse, and I'm going to read it from the English version, what you call today's English version. And I'm doing this just because it's easy to read, but I encourage you to go ahead and try it out in the King James Version. I really like the King James Version more than anything else, so go ahead and read that. But for actually speaking it out, it's so much easier to read a newer version. In the Matthew, the 13th chapter, starting with the 10th verse, it says, Then the disciples came to Jesus and asked him, says, Why do you use parables when you talk to the people? See, Jesus liked to use parables. He liked to use teaching lessons. That's what a parable is. He'd give examples of real life situations, and he used that situation, natural things, to teach the people very complicated spiritual matters. You know, he'd talk about goats and sheep. He'd talk about, the fruit trees. He'd talk about plowing a field. He'd talk about wheat fields and tares in the wheat. And he'd use these examples to teach the people things pertaining to God. And here he was being asked by the disciples, why are you talking constantly in parables? Because, sometimes they're difficult to understand. And it says, Jesus answered it, and he said, the knowledge about the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you. And he's sitting there pointing to the disciples. The knowledge pertaining to the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. So he is hiding information from the people. He's teaching everybody parables, but in a way he's sort of hiding information by using parables, because again, parables are not always easy to understand. It says, for the person who has something will be given more, and so he will have more than enough. But the person who has nothing, he will have taken away from him even the little that he has. So with this parable, he causes a certain amount of confusion. So those who had perhaps a little bit of understanding suddenly are confused and they don't understand anymore. And those who have a little bit more understanding and just trying to understand, suddenly they get even more understanding because they understood the parable, and suddenly they're more enriched. It says, the reason I use parables in talking to them is that they look but do not see. These people, they look but do not see, and they listen but do not hear or understand. These people who he's talking to out in the world, he's given this vast oration, teaching parables, and says they look but do not see, and they hear but do not hear. Basically, they don't have any understanding, and it's kind of like the saying, you might hear things with your ears but not understand what the person's saying. If there's an individual out there saying something real complicated and real deep, sometimes you can't follow along because it's too much for your brain to understand. And that's what he's talking about. They look with their eyes and do not see, and they try to listen with their ears and do not hear. Then he quotes a scripture from Isaiah, the prophet. Jesus is quoting the scripture. It says, this people will listen but do not understand. And they will look but not see, because their minds are dull. They're dumb. And they have stopped their ears. Now that's talking about them. They have stopped their ears. They chose to stop it. They plugged their ears. And they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, now if they didn't do this, it says, otherwise their eyes would see, and their ears would hear, and their minds would understand, and they would turn to me, says God, and I would heal them. So if they did choose to listen and choose to see and choose to hear, God would reveal himself to them and God would heal them and take care of them. But they chose not to because their mind is dull and they don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. What little they have is taken away. It says in the 16th verse, it says, "For as for you," talking to the disciples, "how fortunate you are. Your eyes see and your ears hear." And then it says, "I assure you that many prophets and many of God's people wanted very much to see what you see, but they could not, and hear what you hear, but they did not." So, it was a special time. Jesus is opening up special understanding and giving all this information, and he's trying to tell them that, what you're hearing and understanding, no one has heard before. No one has understood. They wanted to hear it, but they couldn't until this time. And so this people, God used these parables to blind those who wanted to be blind and had that dull mind, and opened it up to those who wanted to hear and had the ability to listen. Now, like I said, this whole video started out with the idea of listening and listening skills. You know it's important to have listening skills. Everybody knows that usually people know they don't listen to their parents. You're a foolish person. A child who doesn't listen to their parents is foolish because a child doesn't have enough knowledge, and they have to trust, have a certain amount of trust in their parents, hoping that their parents have enough knowledge to keep them out of trouble. But if a child doesn't want to listen to their parents, they'll stick their fingers in their ears and they'll close their eyes and pretend like they didn't see it, and then they go out and do something, and they may get hurt. Or, they may be protected by something, but, they don't always get hurt. But there's a reason why your parents said, do not do this and do not do that. It's because they love you. And even if you don't listen to your employers, bad things can happen. Besides getting fired, if your employer says, don't put your hand, in this machine, because if you do it, your hand is going to get broken or cut off. And you're not listening, you're not paying attention because you don't want to hear it, then one of these days you're going to well, I just don't believe him, or perhaps you truly said, he's not worth listening to, and you were truly zoned out when he was speaking, and so you had no clue, and you stuck your hand in that machine, and all of a sudden, you get your hand broke or cut off. That's your own fault. You decided not to listen, you decided not to pay attention, and you suffer the consequences. You suffer the consequences. Parents, children who don't listen to their parents often suffer the consequences. People who don't listen to good advice suffer the consequences. People who don't try to perceive reality suffers the consequences. There is such a thing as not listening to your surrounding, like be totally self-involved and pretending like everything's going to go your way, and then just start out in this life and just run over everybody, and then pretty soon, because you're not listening to reality, you suffer the consequences. Well, the ultimate reality is that if you don't listen to God, you're going to be destroyed, because He speaks of wisdom, and wisdom pertains to life, and if you're not listening to things that pertain to wisdom and the things that God has to say, you're going to suffer the consequences, and it will cost you your life. So these parables and these things that he was trying to say, you have to really devote yourself very much so in trying to understand these things. Now, think about what he had to say there. It says, for those who didn't listen, if I read that one part again, it says, for the person who has something will be given more, so that he will have more than enough. But the person who has nothing will have taken away from him even the little he has. So again it says, for the person who has something will be given more. That means if you have a little bit of knowledge there, you're going to be given more. If you're sitting there wanting that knowledge, you're desiring after that knowledge, and you're seeking it with all your heart. It says for him that, but the person who has nothing the person who really didn't want to listen. You know, those people were standing around. They were paying attention. They were listening in a way, but they weren't really trying to perceive what Jesus was trying to say. It says, but the person who has nothing will have taken away from him even the little that he has. So the ultimate thing of what's being taught here is that you can't just kind of listen to God, but you have to really devote yourself to trying to understand what he's trying to say. You have to really devote yourself in perceiving what's being said. Otherwise, you're going to have that information taken away from you, and God's going to remove the knowledge from you, and you're going to be destroyed because you have a lack of knowledge. It's even in the Old Testament, the people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. But he's deliberately taking that knowledge away because these people don't really want to understand, don't really want to perceive. And I don't want to be in that situation. You know, I grew up knowing that I was ignorant. You know, it's kind of a funny thing to say that, but when I was little, I had a good idea that I was stupid. I didn't want to be stupid. I didn't want to be ignorant, but I knew because I heard other people speak and they knew what they were doing, and I knew that I didn't. So I said, you know, am I going to sit around here and be foolish all my life? Am I going to sit there and try to make these decisions for myself when I realized that I'm stupid and I didn't know what I was doing? I said, no, in my reality, I said, no, I need to learn truth. I need to learn wisdom. I need to learn doctrine. I need to gather in this information. And so I went to seeking it with a fear. You know, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and I went to seeking truth. But, you know, it's never too late to start, in a way. You know, if you're older and you finally come to the realization that you need to learn more, well, let me tell you, you don't need to be timid about it. You need to focus all you can on it, because if you don't, in this case, you will lose what you have. We were talking about the scriptures. You know, we're not just talking about general wisdom. I mean, I can learn everything I want to know about trees and be really intelligent about that. But, you know, I'm talking about things that pertaining to God and life. And anyway, I hope you guys have listened to what I had to say. Hopefully you've listened, you know, because the whole subject's about listening. And I appreciate it that y'all guys are listening to this video. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And be sure to devote more of your time to understanding and actually trying to squeeze out as much information as you can out of the scriptures, and then you'll grow. I think it's great advice. I mean, I needed this when I was little, and everybody needs to remember this. It's important to study and keep your mind alert when it comes to God. So anyway, I'll keep from rambling on there. Peace out. Have a good day.